And lastly, to wrap up, we have our last story, which is the NPA to appeal the right to die ruling that was made last week. Of course, we know that the Dignity SA group was pushing for us to allow euthanasia to happen here, and the courts ruled in favor of this. And now the NPA is saying that this is invalid and that rather we should appeal it. What do you guys think? This is a very topical conversation at the moment, and it is touchy, I think. But I think it's important to have a chat about it. Where do people think, what do you think should be happening?
Sure. I mean, this is a decision made by the patient who is 100% mentally at his wits. I mean, he wants to die. And I remember last year there was a very similar story, the way the state of Oregon in the States, they are very pro euthanasia. So a girl named Brittany
Maynard.
Yeah, oh yes, Brittany Maynard. She went through this whole process and created an incredible online following and releasing videos on this, and eventually she had assisted suicide, on 1 November, which was quite a big thing. And this is a very controversial subject because the patient wants to end this struggle and pain, but then you have the other pole of pro-life, and not holding and in this case, not holding the doctor accountable for what he's done. This is, I mean, these doctors, they swear that they will do anything to keep people alive.
Exactly.
They take an oath.
Yeah,
yes,
Hippocratic
exactly.
oath.
And now they're put under pressure from a patient to exactly break that oath. So this is absolutely a big, I'm not sure in what direction, big step in what direction for South Africa, but this is quite a large decision.
Bailey, what do you think?
I think it's so difficult. Each patient is completely unique, and each case needs to really be scrutinized. And I think anyone who's gone through seeing a loved one be in a terminally ill situation, it is heartbreaking. But just because it's heartbreaking for the family doesn't mean that, decisions should be taken lightly.
Yeah.
And it's a very tough one. I mean, I don't know where I sit on this.
Absolutely.
I try and internalize this and go, what would I do? Or on the other hand, what if someone that really was really close to me had this terminally ill disease and said, I want to die? How would I feel about that? And is it a case that society is just so terrified of death, and the fear is what makes people so scared about making these decisions? From a doctor's point of view, I think it must be so difficult, exactly like you were saying, to go, this is going against everything that, we've taken the oath for. I think it's such a tricky one. And also to try and prove that the patient is of sound mind.
Yeah.
That's another thing to go through.
Well, I know it's not as easy as just like, making a flip decision about I want to die, and then obviously applications and stuff like that would have to go through. But, I guess there comes that point where does the doctor need to go for counseling, to actively help and assist someone to die? It's very different from someone dying on the hospital bed or surgery went wrong. So I guess it does involve more than just the person who wants to pass on. So do you think
a ripple effect?
Yeah, absolutely. So are we ready as a country? I mean, our healthcare system is doing somewhat okay, but I guess it takes a lot of other people to make it happen. And are they ready, and are those systems in place for such a thing?
For a medical practitioner to come at a point where he agrees that this is fine and that he will physically take that step with the patient, already tells you something about, in what state this patient is. Because
that's a good point.
A medical practitioner doesn't want anyone to die on his watch, of course. But for him to say, okay, I think this is pretty much, that's actually the best solution. This is, so from his perspective, you can understand that maybe, for them both, you can understand their argument of why they would consider this. A man in absolute pain who doesn't feel like he can contribute at all in any way, and doesn't want, and he's in pain, and his family will remember him as the one that's in bed and it's in pain. So there is that point of, there must be much consideration from the doctor's side as to why he would be able to do that. So,
I know the NPA said that they are disappointed with the judgment and will take appeal because it has far-reaching implications from a health point of view, constitutional rights, and the powers of the NPA. Now, I feel like that quote just shows that they're not really concerned about the patient that we're talking
Right.
about, you know. So what do you think? Are we trying to protect kind of legislation or the rights of a human or the desires of a human being? So I feel like there's things in contention here. I don't know if you
I
get
feel
the
like
same.
they threw in the Constitution just as a, you know, a little safety net there to kind of bring in the patient. But you're 100% right. It does feel like that. It feels very clinical almost. And unfortunately, this is a very emotional decision as well as a medical, clinical decision. It's you've got to try and find that balance. And I don't know what the right or wrong answer is.
The thing is, I mean, this opens doors to future arguments
Right.
in the law as to why future patients should go the same route.
Yeah.
So this is an absolute turning point as to, okay, for all these years, for you know, it's been, there's no way to, okay, fine, this one. This just opens a new door of, you know, possibilities of the same euthanasia becoming more and more common.
Right.
As the same argument will be used.
Yeah.
You know, terminally ill patients will be there in the future, and they will want to. You know,
And
some of them might
patients
want
are-
the same route.
They are not cookie cutter cases. Not every single patient has, oh, you've got these symptoms, well, you've got X, Y, Z. You know, so I think that's what also makes it difficult, is having to take a look at each patient individually and really having a look at, you know, what the best decision would be. And of course, when you take that legally, that is incredibly difficult, because you need to have a law that abides to a whole bunch of people, not a law that abides to you and maybe person number 43, and that's where it gets really, really difficult. So I can definitely see both sides, but where do you make the decision between an
Yeah.
emotional one and what's the best for that person and what the law says?
Yeah. So I feel like we've got a long way to go in terms of finding the right place
Sure.
for this. But I guess it's interesting, though, that we've made this kind of progression. I mean, this kind of thing wouldn't be really in our news a long time ago.
No.
Like,
No.
so I think that's already in itself exciting, that there are these kind of shifts.
We really live in a very interesting world.
Yeah.
We really do.
South Africa right now is in a very, it's interesting, it's turbulent, and
Yeah.
there's stuff going on. So I
Yeah.
guess we'll just have to keep watching and see what happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah.